She was pregnant and pushed off the cliff by her billionaire CEO ex, or so she thought. She pretended to be dead. What happened next shocked everyone. Azura? His voice cracked on the second syllable, a name he hadn't spoken aloud in 6 years. She froze, the yacht blueprint slipping from her fingers as the blood drained from her face. The man before her, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that couldn't quite disguise the haunted look in his eyes, took a step closer. "That's impossible," he whispered. "You're dead. I identified your body." "I'm sorry," she managed, desperately maintaining the lie that had kept her alive. "My name is Mira. You must have me confused with someone else." But the little girl clinging to her leg looked up with curious eyes identical to the man staring at them both in shock. Eyes that made denial impossible. "She has my eyes," he said, his voice breaking. "My exact eyes." The child spoke up innocently, dooming her mother's carefully constructed deception. "Mommy, why is that man crying? Have you ever wondered what it would take for you to fake your own death? What kind of betrayal would make you abandon everything, your name, your past, your entire identity, just to survive? And what would happen if, after years of living in the shadows, the very person you were hiding from suddenly stood before you, not as the monster in your nightmares, but as someone who might have been a victim too?" This is the story of Azura Thorne, a woman who fell from a cliff and chose to let the world believe she died that day. And of Beckett Rhodes, the powerful man she was convinced had tried to kill her and their unborn child. But sometimes, the truth is more twisted than even our darkest fears. Sometimes, the villain in our story is wearing someone else's face. Join me, Mr. Wentworth, as we unravel a tale of deception, betrayal, and the shocking truth that threatens to destroy the fragile new life Azura has built from the ashes of her old one. If you're ready for a story that will challenge everything you think you know about trust, revenge, and second chances, stay with me, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles for more stories that will leave you questioning who the real villains are in the games people play. 6 years earlier, the steady beep of medical monitors was the first sound Azura Thorne heard as consciousness slowly returned to her broken body. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, sharp stabs in her ribs, dull throbbing in her head, and a peculiar numbness in her left leg. Her eyes fluttered open to a sterile hospital room, the harsh fluorescent lights sending daggers through her skull. "She's awake," a female voice said from somewhere to her right. "Azura, can you hear me?" Azura tried to respond, but her throat felt like sandpaper. A straw appeared at her lips, and she gratefully sipped cool water. What happened?" she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. A woman in a white coat leaned into her field of vision, early 50s. Sharp, intelligent eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses, silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. "I'm Dr. Linnea Frost. You fell from Ravens Point Cliff. A hiker found you on the rocks below. It's a miracle you survived." "Fell? No, that wasn't right." The memories came flooding back in disjointed fragments. The argument with Beckett at the cliff's edge, his face contorted with rage when she told him about the pregnancy, his hands on her shoulders, the sudden terrifying sensation of falling backward into nothing but air. "He pushed me," Azura gasped, trying to sit up despite the explosion of pain in her ribs. "Beckett pushed me." Dr. Frost gently pressed her back against the pillows. "Try not to move. You have 4 broken ribs, a concussion, and your left femur was shattered. We've inserted a rod to stabilize it." "My baby," Azura suddenly remembered, her hands flying to her stomach. "I'm pregnant. Is my baby okay?" A moment of hesitation crossed the doctor's face. "I'm sorry, but the trauma was too severe. You lost the baby." The words hit Azura like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She turned her face away, hot tears spilling down her cheeks as a primal grief washed over her. Beckett had not only tried to kill her, but had succeeded in killing their child. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating that for a moment she wished the fall had killed her too. "The police will want to speak with you," Dr. Frost continued after giving her a moment to process. "If someone pushed you, that's attempted murder." "1. Attempted murder." The words echoed in Azura's mind alongside the image of Beckett Rhodes, technology wunderkind, billionaire CEO of Rhodes Innovations, and the man she had agreed to marry just 3 months ago. The man whose family had made their disapproval of her abundantly clear from the beginning. The man who had looked her in the eyes as he sent her plummeting toward what should have been certain death. "Has anyone been here?" Azura asked, suddenly terrified. "Does Beckett know I'm alive?" Dr. Frost's expression changed subtly, becoming more guarded. "No visitors yet. You were brought in as a Jane Doe. Your injuries were so severe that initial identification wasn't possible." A terrible thought occurred to Azura. If he thinks he killed me, he might try again when he finds out I survived. "You're safe here," Dr. Frost assured her. "Security has been instructed." "You don't understand," Azura interrupted, real fear coursing through her. "The Rhodes family owns half this city. They donate millions to this hospital. Their name is on the West Wing. There's nowhere I can hide from them." Dr. Frost studied her intently, as if making a decision. Then she glanced at the door before leaning closer. "There might be another option," she said, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. "But it would mean giving up everything, your name, your identity, your entire life." "What do you mean?" "What if Azura Thorne did die on those rocks?" Dr. Frost suggested. "What if we declare you dead, create a new identity, and transfer you to a facility where no one would think to look for you?" The proposition was so unexpected, so extreme that Azura could only stare in shock. "You want me to fake my own death? Is that even possible?" "With the right connections and motivation, many things are possible." Dr. Frost replied cryptically. "I have personal reasons for wanting to help someone in your situation, but you would need to decide quickly, before the police are formally involved." Azura's mind raced. Disappearing would mean abandoning everything, her small interior design business that she'd built from nothing, her modest apartment, the few friends she had. But what was the alternative? To live in constant fear, looking over her shoulder, knowing that one of the most powerful families in the country wanted her silenced. "Why would you risk your career to help me?" Azura asked, suspicious despite her desperate situation. Something dark flickered in Dr. Frost's eyes. "Let's just say I understand what it means to be targeted by powerful men who believe they're above consequences. This isn't altruism, Miss Thorne. It's solidarity." 3 days later, while still heavily sedated, Azura Thorne was officially pronounced dead. A body from the morgue, a Jane Doe of similar build and age, was identified as Azura by a grief-stricken Beckett Rhodes, who was too distraught to look closely at the facially disfigured corpse. The death was ruled an accident, the police investigation cursory at best. The Rhodes family's influence ensured minimal scrutiny, and Azura's lack of close family meant no one questioned the hasty cremation that followed. Meanwhile, the real Azura was transferred under heavy sedation to a private medical facility 3 states away, where she would spend the next 6 months recovering from her injuries and preparing for a life that was no longer her own. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor, and fate had one more shock in store. 2 weeks after arriving at the facility, Dr. Frost delivered news that changed everything. The tests were conclusive, she told Azura, who was finally able to sit up in bed without excruciating pain. "You're still pregnant. The baby survived." Azura's hand flew to her mouth. "But you said—" "Initial scans showed no heartbeat," Dr. Frost explained. "It happens sometimes in trauma cases. The fetal heartbeat becomes too faint to detect. But your latest blood work shows hormone levels consistent with an ongoing pregnancy. You're approximately 10 weeks along." The revelation was both miraculous and terrifying. A child, Beckett's child, was growing inside her, a living connection to the man who had tried to kill them both. "What am I going to do?" Azura whispered, overwhelmed by the implications. Dr. Frost sat on the edge of the bed. "You have options, Azura. No one would judge you for terminating after what you've been through." Azura placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach. Despite everything, despite the circumstances of conception and the identity of the father, she couldn't bring herself to consider ending this miraculous life that had somehow clung to existence against all odds. "No," she said firmly. "This baby survived for a reason. I'm keeping my child. Then we'll adjust our plans accordingly." Dr. Frost nodded, respecting her decision. "But it means you'll need to be even more careful about your new identity. A child complicates things. A child complicates things." Indeed, the pregnancy did complicate the already challenging process of becoming someone else. While her body healed, Azura worked with Dr. Frost and a small team of trusted associates to create Mira Reed, a graphic designer from Seattle, with a clean but unremarkable background. She learned to speak with a slight Pacific Northwest accent, studied the geography and local culture of a city she'd never visited, and practiced signing a name that still felt foreign to her fingers. As her belly grew, so did her determination. By the time Phoenix Reed was born, a healthy 7-pound girl with her father's striking blue eyes, Azura had fully committed to her new life. She would raise her daughter in safety, far from the Rhodes family's influence. Phoenix would never know the truth about her father or the violence that had nearly claimed both their lives before she was even born. With Dr. Frost's help, Mira and baby Phoenix relocated to Osprey Cove, a small coastal town nearly 3,000 miles from where Azura Thorne had died. The doctor provided startup funds. "Consider it an investment in your future," she'd said, which Mira used to establish a modest design, consulting business specializing in yacht interiors. Her natural talent, combined with the wealthy clientele of the upscale marina, allowed her to build a comfortable life for herself and Phoenix. For 6 years, she lived in peaceful anonymity. Phoenix grew into a bright, curious child with an uncanny aptitude for puzzles and patterns that sometimes made Mira's heart ache with the reminder of her father's brilliant mind. The nightmares never completely disappeared. Mira would still sometimes wake gasping for breath, the sensation of falling vivid in her mind, but they became less frequent as time passed. Until the day the past came roaring back into her carefully constructed present. Mira was in her small studio office at the marina, reviewing blueprints for a luxury catamaran interior, when her assistant Jade burst in without knocking. "Have you seen this?" Jade thrust her tablet into Mira's hands, eyes wide with excitement. "Rhodes Innovations just announced their new neural interface. It's going to revolutionize everything. And guess what? Beckett Rhodes himself is coming to the tech conference at the Grand Harbor Hotel next week." Mira's blood turned to ice as she stared at the screen. There he was, Beckett Rhodes, looking only slightly older than she remembered. Same chiseled features, same confident posture, same intense blue eyes that she saw every day in her daughter's face. The eyes of a man who had pushed her off a cliff and left her for dead. "Are you okay?" Jade asked, noticing her boss's sudden pallor. "You look like you've seen a ghost." The irony of the statement might have made Mira laugh if she weren't struggling to breathe. "I'm fine," she managed. "Just a migraine coming on." After Jade left, Mira locked the door and sank to the floor, panic threatening to overwhelm her. Beckett Rhodes, here in Osprey Cove. Her carefully constructed safe haven suddenly felt like a trap. Should she run? Take Phoenix and disappear again? But where would they go? How many times could she reinvent herself before the fragile foundation of her life crumbled completely? That evening, as Phoenix chattered about her day at school over dinner in their small but charming beach cottage, Mira made a decision. She wouldn't run. Not this time. She would be cautious, avoid the areas where conference attendees might gather, and trust that 6 years, a different name, and the subtle physical changes from her injuries would be enough to keep her unrecognizable if they happened to cross paths. "Mommy, you're not listening," Phoenix complained, waving a small hand in front of her mother's face. "I'm sorry, sweetie." Mira refocused on her daughter, this beautiful, innocent child who had no idea of the danger that had just entered their lives. "Tell me again about your science project." Phoenix launched back into her explanation of marine ecosystems with the enthusiasm only a 6-year-old could muster for algae and tide pools. Mira forced herself to engage, to be present for her daughter, while suppressing the fear that churned beneath the surface of her carefully maintained composure. Later that night, after Phoenix was asleep, Mira retrieved a small fireproof box from the back of her closet. Inside was a burner phone that she had kept charged but unused for 6 years. She dialed the only number programmed into its memory. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you," Dr. Frost answered without preamble, as if they'd spoken yesterday instead of years ago. "He's coming here," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "To Osprey Cove. For a tech conference." A moment of silence. "Are you planning to run?" "I don't know. Should I?" "That depends," Dr. Frost replied carefully, "on whether you're still convinced he pushed you." The question caught Mira off guard. "What do you mean?" "Of course he pushed me. I remember it clearly." Memory is a tricky thing, especially in traumatic situations. The doctor said, "There's something I never told you. Something I found when I was examining you that first day." Mira's hand tightened around the phone. "What?" "Trace evidence under your fingernails. DNA that wasn't yours. And wasn't Beckett Rhodes's either." The revelation hit Mira like a physical blow. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there may have been someone else on that cliff with you," Dr. Frost replied. "Someone who may have been the real person who pushed you. Or perhaps someone who tried to save you." "Huh? Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because you were traumatized, pregnant, and convinced Beckett was the culprit. You needed certainty to move forward with your new life, not more questions." A pause. "But now that he's entering your orbit again, perhaps it's time to consider that your memory of that day might not be as reliable as you believe." After ending the call, Mira sat in the darkness of her bedroom, mind racing. Could she have been wrong? Had 6 years of believing Beckett tried to kill her been based on a false memory? The thought was almost as destabilizing as the news of his impending arrival. She closed her eyes, forcing herself to revisit the memory she'd spent years trying to suppress. The cliffs at Raven's Point, the argument, Beckett's face when she told him about the baby. But now, trying to focus on the details, she realized how fragmented the memory actually was. She remembered falling, remembered the sensation of hands on her shoulders, but the rest was a blur of emotion and fear rather than clear recollection. Had her mind filled in the blanks, casting Beckett as the villain, because of the tension that had been building between them in the weeks before? Because of his family's obvious disdain for her? Or was her memory accurate, and Dr. Frost was merely planting seeds of doubt for reasons of her own? The questions followed Mira into uneasy dreams where she fell endlessly while shadowy figures watched from the cliff above. The tech conference began 3 days later, bringing an influx of industry professionals to the normally quiet coastal town. Mira had rearranged her schedule to work from home as much as possible, venturing to the marina only when necessary, and at times when conference attendees were likely to be in sessions. Phoenix, oblivious to her mother's anxiety, was excited by the unusual energy in town and the impressive yachts that had arrived to accommodate the wealthier guests. "Can we go see the big boats this weekend?" she begged as Mira walked her to school Friday morning. "We'll see," Mira hedged, knowing that the marina would be hosting a reception for conference VIPs on Saturday, an event Beckett Rhodes would almost certainly attend. "Maybe we'll drive up the coast instead, visit that tide pool you like." Phoenix's lower lip jutted out in disappointment, but she was quickly distracted by the arrival of her best friend at the school gates. Mira watched her daughter race off, pigtails bouncing, blissfully unaware of the danger that had invaded their sanctuary. With Phoenix safely at school, Mira headed to the marina for an unavoidable meeting with clients who were renovating their yacht's interior. She had timed her visit to avoid the conference's morning break, when attendees might wander the docks, but fate had other plans. As she approached the client's vessel, blueprints tucked under her arm, a familiar voice froze her in place. "The integration capabilities are revolutionary, but the real breakthrough is in the neural response time," Beckett Rhodes was explaining to a small group of admirers as they strolled along the dock just ahead of her. "We've reduced latency to nearly imperceptible levels." Mira's instinct was to turn and flee, but movement would only draw attention. Instead, she ducked her head, allowing her long chestnut hair dyed from its natural honey blonde to obscure her face as she pretended to study her papers. The group was moving away from her. Beckett's back now turned as he continued his impromptu lecture. She might have escaped notice if a sudden gust of wind hadn't torn one of the blueprints from her grasp, sending it skittering across the dock directly into the path of Beckett's entourage. "I've got it," a helpful conference attendee called, chasing after the errant paper and retrieving it just as it threatened to sail into the water. "Here you go, ma'am." "Thank you," Mira murmured, keeping her gaze downcast as she accepted the blueprint. But it was too late. Beckett had turned at the commotion, his eyes landing on her with polite curiosity that quickly transformed into shocked recognition. He faltered mid-sentence, staring at her as if he'd seen a ghost, which, from his perspective, he had. "Excuse me," he said abruptly to his companions. "There's something I need to attend to." Panic surged through Mira as he approached, his expression a mixture of disbelief and intensity. She clutched her blueprints to her chest like a shield, mind racing for an escape route that didn't exist. I'm sorry to bother you," Beckett said when he reached her, his voice carefully controlled though she could see the tremor in his hands. "But have we met before? You seem incredibly familiar." "I don't think so," Mira replied, adopting the slight Pacific Northwest accent she perfected years ago. "I would remember meeting someone like you, Mr. Rhodes." His eyes, those piercing blue eyes so identical to Phoenix's, searched her face with desperate intensity. "You just remind me of someone I knew once." "I have one of those faces," she offered with a forced smile. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have clients waiting." She moved a step around him, but he shifted slightly, not exactly blocking her path but making it clear he wasn't ready to end the encounter. "May I ask your name?" "Mira Reed. I design yacht interiors." She gestured vaguely toward the blueprints in her arms, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Mira," he repeated, studying her as if committing every detail to memory. "Do you mind if I ask how long you've lived in Osprey Cove?" The question sent alarm bells ringing in her mind. Why would he care how long she'd been here, unless he suspected something? "About 6 years," she answered truthfully, seeing no advantage in lying about information that could be easily verified. "Now I really must go. My clients are expecting me." This time, when she moved past him, he didn't try to stop her, but she could feel his gaze following her all the way to her client's yacht. The meeting passed in a blur, Mira going through the motions of professionalism while internally calculating how quickly she could get home, pack essentials, and flee with Phoenix before Beckett could confirm his suspicions. But when she emerged from the meeting 2 hours later, he was waiting on the dock, alone this time, his conference entourage nowhere in sight. "Miss Reed," he called, approaching with determined strides. "I apologize for ambushing you, but I was hoping we might talk." "I'm very busy, Mr. Rhodes," she replied, quickening her pace toward the marina office where Jade and others would be working, witnesses who would make any confrontation too public for comfort. "Please," he said, and something in his voice, a note of raw emotion she remembered all too well, made her pause despite her better judgment. 5 minutes, that's all I ask." "Why?" she challenged, finally meeting his gaze directly. "What could you possibly have to say to a stranger?" "Because you're not a stranger," he said quietly, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "Are you, Azura?" The name hit her like a physical blow. She glanced around frantically, but the dock was momentarily empty except for them. "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Mira Reed." "Azura," he repeated, and there was anguish in his voice now. "How is this possible? I identified your body. I attended your funeral. I've spent 6 years believing you were dead." "You're confused," she insisted, backing away from him. "You're mistaking me for someone else." "No," he shook his head. "I could never mistake you. Despite the hair color and the way you hold yourself differently now, your eyes are the same. The small scar on your left temple that you got when we were hiking in Yellowstone, it's still there." He gestured toward the barely visible mark that her makeup hadn't quite concealed. "And your voice, you've changed the accent, but underneath it's still yours." Trapped in the lie with no plausible escape, Mira felt her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. "What do you want from me?" "The truth," he said simply. "Why did you disappear? Why let me believe you were dead? Do you have any idea what that did to me?" A surge of anger burned through her fear. "What it did to you? You pushed me off a cliff. You tried to kill me and our baby because the great Beckett Rhodes couldn't have his perfect life derailed by an unexpected pregnancy." Her accusation seemed to physically stagger him. "What are you talking about? I never pushed you. I would never hurt you. I loved you." "Then why was I found broken and bleeding at the bottom of Raven's Point?" she demanded, years of suppressed rage finally finding voice. "Why do I still have nightmares about falling, about your hands on my shoulders shoving me backward?" "That's not what happened," he insisted, genuine horror in his expression. "I wasn't even on the cliff when you fell. I was on my way there to meet you when I got the call that there had been an accident." His denial was so convincing, so seemingly authentic that for a moment Mira's certainty wavered. But then she remembered the sensation of falling, the betrayal she'd felt in that moment, and her resolve hardened again. "You're lying," she hissed. "Just like you've been lying to the world for 6 years, pretending to mourn while building your empire on my grave." "Azura, my name is Mira." She cut him off. "Azura Thorne died that day on the cliffs, just like you wanted. Now leave me alone, or I'll call security." She turned to storm away, heart pounding with adrenaline and fear, when his next words stopped her cold. "You were pregnant." Mira froze mid-step, her back still to him. When you fell, you were pregnant." Beckett continued, his voice thick with emotion. "You were going to tell me that day. I found out afterward, from the autopsy report, a baby I never knew about until it was too late." She turned slowly to face him, searching for any sign of deception. "How did you know I was going to tell you that day?" "Because you texted me," he said. "Meet me at our spot. I have news that will change everything." Those were your exact words. "I assumed you were going to break our engagement. Things had been strained between us for weeks. I never imagined." His voice broke. "I never imagined it was because you were carrying our child." The text. She had sent that text. It was one of the few clear memories she had from that day, composing those words, trying to find the right way to share news that she knew would complicate their already troubled relationship. "If you didn't meet me there," she said slowly, confusion beginning to cloud her certainty, "then who did I argue with on the cliff? Who pushed me?" Beckett's expression darkened. "I have a theory. One that's haunted me for 6 years. But this isn't the place to discuss it." He glanced around the increasingly busy dock. "Please, can we go somewhere private? There's so much you don't know. So much I need to explain." Mira hesitated, torn between the self-preservation instinct that screamed at her to run and the growing seed of doubt about what had really happened that day. "I can't. I have to pick up my daughter from school soon." Something flickered in Beckett's eyes at the mention of a daughter. "Your daughter," he repeated carefully. "How old is she?" Mira realized her mistake too late. "That's none of your business." 6, he calculated aloud, his brilliant mind making the connection immediately. She would be 6 years old. "Stay away from my daughter," Mira warned, real fear coloring her voice. "Whatever happened between us, Phoenix is off limits." "Phoenix," he echoed, a sad smile touching his lips. "You named her after the bird that rises from the ashes." "It's perfect." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Azura, Mira, please listen to me. You and Phoenix could be in danger. The same danger that nearly killed you 6 years ago hasn't gone away. If I could find you, others might too." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning," he insisted. "There are things you don't understand, pieces of the puzzle you're missing. Please, just hear me out. For Phoenix's sake, if not your own." The mention of danger to her daughter pierced through Mira's defenses. Whatever had happened between them, whatever Beckett had or hadn't done, Phoenix's safety was her paramount concern. "1 hour," she conceded finally. "Meet me at Lighthouse Park at 4. Come alone, or I won't be there." 1. Relief washed over his features. "Thank you. I'll be there." As she walked away, Mira's mind was in turmoil. Could she have been wrong all these years? Could the memories she built her entire new life around be false? And if Beckett hadn't pushed her that day, who had? The school day ended at 3:15, giving Mira just enough time to collect Phoenix and drop her with Jade, who had often watched the girl when work required Mira's full attention. "Are you sure everything's okay?" Jade asked, noting her boss's distracted demeanor. "You've seemed on edge all week." "Just a difficult client situation I need to handle," Mira assured her. "I shouldn't be more than a couple of hours." "I end her." Phoenix was delighted with the unexpected playdate, barely pausing for a goodbye kiss before racing off to examine Jade's collection of seashells. Mira watched her go with a pang of apprehension. Was she making a terrible mistake in meeting Beckett? Should she take Phoenix and run instead? But running would mean starting over again. New names, new town, new school for Phoenix. And if what Beckett said was true, if there was danger she didn't fully understand, running blindly might lead them straight into it. Lighthouse Park was relatively quiet at 4 o'clock, most tourists having departed as the afternoon cooled. Mira found a bench with clear sightlines in all directions, positioned so that no one could approach without her seeing them. Her hand remained in her pocket, fingers wrapped around the small canister of pepper spray she carried everywhere. Beckett arrived precisely on time, alone as promised. He had changed from his conference attire into jeans and a simple navy sweater that reminded her painfully of the man she had fallen in love with years ago, before power and family expectations had created fissures in their relationship. "Thank you for coming," he said, remaining standing at a respectful distance when she didn't invite him to sit. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But you mentioned danger to Phoenix, and that's not something I can ignore." He nodded, his expression grave. "May I?" He gestured to the space beside her on the bench. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. He sat, maintaining enough distance to keep her comfortable, and stared out at the ocean for a long moment before speaking. "How much do you know about my family?" he asked finally. "I know the road's name opens doors and silences questions," she replied. "I know your mother never thought I was good enough for her precious son. I know your father's company was the foundation for roads innovations." "Ola, what about my brother?" Mira frowned. "You're an only child." Beckett turned to look at her, genuine surprise in his expression. "No, I'm not. I have a twin brother, Rowan, identical in appearance but very different in temperament and stability." "That's impossible," Mira shook her head. "We were together for over a year. You never mentioned a brother." "Because my family had him erased from public record after his third hospitalization," Beckett explained. "Rowan has severe psychiatric issues, paranoid schizophrenia with violent tendencies that emerged in our teens. The Rhodes family couldn't have that kind of publicity, so he became the family secret, housed in private facilities, kept away from the public eye." Mira stared at him, trying to process this revelation. "You expect me to believe you have a secret identical twin brother that you never once mentioned during our relationship?" "I wanted to tell you," he said quietly, "especially after we got engaged. But my mother, she made it clear that family secrets were to remain secret, even from future spouses, until after the wedding when legal bindings would ensure discretion." "That's insane," Mira scoffed. "Welcome to the Rhodes family," he replied with a bitter smile. "Where image is everything and inconvenient truths are buried so deep, even family members start believing the lies." Despite her skepticism, there was something in his tone, a weariness, a resignation, that rang true. "What does this have to do with what happened at Ravens Point?" Beckett reached into his pocket and withdrew his phone. 3 weeks before your fall, Rowan had escaped from his facility. The family kept it quiet, using private security to search for him instead of police. He was unstable, off his medication, and fixated on the idea that I had stolen his life, a delusion he'd had since we were teenagers. He unlocked the phone and pulled up a photo, turning the screen toward her. "This is security camera footage from a gas station 2 miles from Ravens Point. It was taken 1 hour before you fell." Mira's blood ran cold as she stared at the image. It showed a man who looked exactly like Beckett, but with longer, unkempt hair and wild eyes. The timestamp confirmed what he was saying. "That day, when you texted about meeting at the cliffs, I was actually in a meeting with the board. My phone was off. By the time I saw your message and headed to Ravens Point, emergency services were already there." His voice broke slightly. "They told me you'd fallen, that it was too late. I never got to say goodbye." "You're saying your brother pushed me?" Mira said slowly, struggling to reconcile this new information with the memory that had defined her existence for 6 years. "That I mistook him for you." "Identical twins," Beckett reminded her gently. "And you'd never seen him before. Had no reason to suspect you weren't meeting me." The possibility was shocking, destabilizing, yet it explained the inconsistencies that had always nagged at the edges of her memory, the strange, almost manic energy of Beckett that day. The way his expressions had seemed subtly wrong, the confusion she'd felt even before the argument began. "If what you're saying is true," she said carefully, "why didn't you tell the police? Why wasn't your brother investigated?" Beckett's expression darkened. "Because by the time I pieced it together, my mother had already handled everything. The official report listed your fall as an accident. Rowan had been quietly returned to his facility, and I was—" He paused, swallowing hard. "I was sedated, nearly catatonic with grief. By the time I emerged from that fog, weeks had passed, and my mother made it clear that dragging up theories would only dishonor your memory and damage the company." "So you just accepted that?" Mira demanded, anger flaring. "You didn't fight for justice?" "I did fight," he insisted. "I hired private investigators, demanded access to Rowan, searched for any evidence that might support what I suspected. But my mother had been thorough. Records were altered or destroyed. Staff were paid for their silence. And Rowan," he sighed heavily, Rowan had been subjected to such aggressive treatment that his memories of that period were completely scrambled, possibly intentionally. The weight of what he was suggesting, a conspiracy orchestrated by his own family, was almost too much to comprehend, yet as outlandish as it seemed, it aligned with what Mira knew of Vivian Rhodes, a woman who had once coldly informed her that the Rhodes family has survived for generations by prioritizing legacy over sentimentality. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked finally. "After 6 years, why does it matter?" "Because 3 months ago, Rowan was deemed sufficiently stabilized by his doctors and released into supervised outpatient care," Beckett replied, real fear evident in his voice. "And 2 weeks ago, he disappeared again. His handlers think he stopped taking his medication." A chill ran down Mira's spine. "And you think he might come after me? But how would he even know I'm alive?" "He might not," Beckett admitted. "But he's always been obsessed with me, with taking what's mine. If he discovered I was coming to Osprey Cove for the conference, he might follow you here," Mira finished, the implication striking her with horrifying clarity. "Exactly. And if he saw us talking today, if he realized who you are, who Phoenix Island..." Beckett didn't need to complete the thought. The danger was obvious. Mira stood abruptly, panic surging through her. "I need to get to Phoenix. Now." "I'll come with you," Beckett offered, rising as well. "No," she shook her head firmly. "I don't know if I believe your story, and even if I do, I'm not ready for Phoenix to meet you. Not yet." Something like pain crossed his features, but he nodded in acceptance. "At least let me give you my private number. Not the one anyone else has, a direct line only to me. If anything happens, if you see anything suspicious, call immediately." After a moment's hesitation, Mira held out her hand for his phone, entering the number into his contacts. "I'm not promising anything beyond keeping Phoenix safe," she warned him. "This doesn't mean I trust you." "I understand," he said quietly. "But Azura, Mira, whatever name you choose, just know that not a day has passed in 6 years that I haven't mourned you. Finding you alive, it's the miracle I stopped believing was possible." His sincerity was disarming, echoing the man she had once loved rather than the monster who had populated her nightmares. But 6 years of living in fear, of building a life around the certainty of his betrayal, couldn't be undone in a single conversation. "I need time," she told him. "Time to process all of this, to decide what I believe." "Of course," he agreed readily. "I'll be at the conference until Sunday. After that, I can arrange my schedule around whatever makes you comfortable." The casual way he referenced rearranging the schedule of one of the world's most influential CEOs, as if nothing could possibly be more important than this conversation, was so characteristic of the Beckett she had known that it sent a pang of recognition through her. "I'll be in touch," was all she committed to before turning to leave. "Azura," he called after her, using the name that still felt like hers despite 6 years of answering to another. "She has my eyes, doesn't she, Phoenix?" Mira paused without turning back. "Yes," she admitted. "Exactly your eyes." She didn't wait for his response, striding purposefully toward her car with the desperate need to reach her daughter, to hold Phoenix close and protect her from dangers that suddenly seemed to be closing in from all sides. But as she drove toward Jade's apartment, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had believed for 6 years might have been built on a misunderstanding, a case of mistaken identity with catastrophic consequences. And if Beckett was telling the truth about his brother, about the family conspiracy to cover up what had really happened that day, then the danger she had been hiding from all these years was still very real. Only now, it wasn't just her life at stake. It was Phoenix's too. If this story of deception, mistaken identity, and possible redemption has caught your attention, please like this video and subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth. In our next episode, we'll discover if Mira can trust Beckett's incredible story, what really happened on that cliff 6 years ago, and most importantly, whether a mother's fierce protection will be enough to save her daughter from a danger she never saw coming. Sometimes the face of evil wears a mask identical to the face of love, and telling them apart might be the difference between life and death. Mira's hands trembled as she drove toward Jade's apartment, her mind racing with implications of everything Beckett had revealed. A twin brother, a family conspiracy, the possibility that the foundation of her entire new life was built on a case of mistaken identity. It was almost too much to process, Yet the threat to Phoenix gave her no luxury of time for careful consideration. As she pulled into Jade's driveway, she forced herself to take several deep breaths, not wanting to alarm Phoenix with her obvious distress. She had just reached for her phone to text Jade that she'd arrived when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The front door of Jade's small bungalow was slightly ajar. Jade was meticulously careful about security, especially when watching Phoenix. She would never leave her door open, not even a crack. Fighting rising panic, Mira dialed Jade's number with shaking fingers. From inside the house, she could hear the distant ringing of a phone, but no one answered. She ended the call and dialed 911 instead, explaining the situation in a voice tight with fear. "Please stay in your vehicle until officers arrive," the dispatcher advised. But Mira couldn't wait, not with Phoenix possibly in danger. She grabbed the pepper spray from her purse and approached the house cautiously, every sense on high alert. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet for the usually lively street where children played and neighbors chatted across fences. "Jade?" she called, pushing the door open wider. "Phoenix?" The living room was in disarray, cushions thrown from the couch, a lamp overturned, Jade's collection of seashells scattered across the floor as if swept from their display shelf in a struggle. Mira's heart hammered against her ribs as she moved deeper into the house. "Phoenix?" she called again, fear making her voice crack. "Baby, are you here?" A muffled sound came from the hallway closet, a whimper or cry quickly silenced. Mira rushed to the door and yanked it open to find Jade crouched inside, arms wrapped protectively around Phoenix. Both were pale with fear, but unharmed. "Mommy!" Phoenix launched herself into Mira's arms, trembling violently. "What happened?" Mira demanded, holding her daughter close while examining Jade's frightened face. "A man," Jade whispered, still huddled in the closet. "He just walked in like he belonged here. Started asking questions about you and Phoenix. When I tried to call the police, he grabbed my phone and smashed it. I managed to get Phoenix into the closet and lock us in. He was still searching the house when you called." "What did he look like?" Mira asked, already dreading the answer. "Tall, dark hair, expensive clothes but worn all wrong somehow. And his eyes?" Jade shuddered. "They were so cold, so empty. Like he wasn't really there behind them. Identical to Beckett in appearance, but fundamentally different in essence. Just as he had described his twin." "The police are on their way," Mira assured them, pulling Jade to her feet. "Did he say what he wanted?" "He kept asking where she was, said it was time to finish what he started." Jade wrapped her arms around herself, still shaking. "Mira, who was that man? What's going on?" Before Mira could formulate a response that wouldn't reveal too much, the wail of police sirens approached. Relief flooded through her, but it was short-lived as another realization struck. She couldn't explain this to the police without revealing her true identity, without the whole truth coming to light. But Phoenix's safety had to come first. If that meant exposing her 6-year deception, so be it. The police arrived moments later, 2 officers securing the house while a third took statements from Mira, Jade, and a still trembling Phoenix. Mira kept her explanation deliberately vague, a possible stalker situation, concerns about a mentally unstable man who might be targeting her. She provided a description that matched Rowan but claimed no knowledge of who he might be or what he wanted. "We'll increase patrols in your neighborhood," the officer assured her after taking detailed notes. "But you might consider staying somewhere else for a few days, just as a precaution." Mira nodded, already mentally calculating their options. A hotel would be too public, too easy to track. Friends might unwittingly lead danger to their doors. There was really only one choice, though it terrified her almost as much as Rowan himself. Once the police had departed, promising to check back later, Mira turned to Jade. "I'm so sorry you were dragged into this. Are you okay?" Jade nodded shakily. "I think so. But Mira, who was that man? Why is he looking for you?" "Vice him." "It's complicated," Mira replied, unwilling to share the full truth even now. "But I'm going to make sure he can't hurt anyone else. Can you stay with your sister for a few days? Just until this is resolved?" "Of course," Jade agreed readily. "But what about you and Phoenix? Where will you go?" Mira stroked her daughter's hair as Phoenix clung to her, unusually quiet after the frightening experience. "Somewhere safe," she said, though she wasn't entirely convinced such a place existed anymore. After helping Jade pack a bag and seeing her safely into an Uber headed for her sister's house across town, Mira returned to her own cottage just long enough to gather essential items for herself and Phoenix. She moved with urgent efficiency, knowing that Rowan could return at any moment. "Mommy, I'm scared," Phoenix admitted as she clutched her favorite stuffed octopus while Mira threw clothes into a duffel bag. "That man had scary eyes." "One? I know, sweetheart." Mira knelt to her daughter's level, cupping her small face in her hands. "But I promise I won't let anything happen to you. We're going to stay somewhere different for a little while, like an adventure, okay?" Phoenix nodded solemnly, too shaken to display her usual enthusiasm for new experiences. It broke Mira's heart to see her normally exuberant child so subdued by fear. With their bags packed and loaded into the car, Mira took one last look at the small cottage that had been their sanctuary for 6 years. She had a terrible feeling they might never return to it, that regardless of how this situation resolved, their life in Osprey Cove was over. Taking a deep breath, she pulled out her phone and dialed the number Beckett had given her earlier that day. He answered on the first ring. "Azura? What's wrong?" The genuine concern in his voice helped solidify her decision. "He was here, Rowan. He came looking for us at my friend's house where Phoenix was staying." A sharp intake of breath. "Are you both okay?" "Yes, but scared. The police came, but..." She hesitated, still not fully trusting him despite the mounting evidence supporting his story. "We need somewhere safe to stay. Somewhere he won't think to look." "My suite at the Grand Harbor," Beckett offered immediately. "It has separate bedrooms and top-tier security. No one gets in without being cleared." "I don't know." "Azura," he said gently, using her real name with a familiarity that still felt strange after 6 years as Mira. "I understand your hesitation, but right now, Rowan is the real threat. Let me help protect you and Phoenix." The mention of Phoenix tipped the scales. Whatever history lay between them, whatever truths or lies had shaped the past 6 years, her daughter's safety had to come first. "Text me the details," she conceded. "We'll be there in 20 minutes." The Grand Harbor Hotel occupied a prime position overlooking the marina, its elegant glass facade reflecting the evening light as Mira and Phoenix approached through the underground parking garage as Beckett had suggested, less visible than the main entrance. A discreet security officer was waiting by the private elevator, as promised. "Miss Reed," he nodded respectfully, using the name Beckett had obviously provided. "Mr. Rhodes is expecting you. This elevator goes directly to the penthouse level." Phoenix pressed closer to Mira's side as they entered the elevator, her small hand clutching tightly to her mother's. "Is Mr. Rhodes a friend?" she whispered as the doors closed. Mira hesitated, unsure how to explain the complicated relationship to a 6-year-old. "He's someone who wants to help us," she settled on finally. "Someone I knew a long time ago." Phoenix seemed to accept this explanation, though her usual curiosity was subdued by the lingering effects of the frightening encounter at Jade's house. The elevator opened directly into a spacious foyer, where Beckett was waiting, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had changed into more casual clothes, dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that reminded Mira painfully of happier times. "Thank you for coming," he said, maintaining a respectful distance as they stepped into the suite. "I've arranged for additional security on this floor. No one will get past them." Mira nodded, grateful for his practical approach rather than pressing for the emotional reunion he must have been craving. "This is Phoenix," she said simply, resting a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. Beckett's gaze dropped to the little girl, and Mira saw the physical impact of the moment hit him, a slight stagger, a sharp intake of breath, his eyes widening as he took in the child who was so clearly his own. Phoenix had his eyes, his jawline, even the slight dimple in her left cheek when she frowned in concentration. "Hello, Phoenix," he said finally, his voice gentle as he crouched to her level. "I'm Beckett. It's very nice to meet you." Phoenix studied him with the careful assessment she applied to all new adults in her life. "You have eyes like mine," she observed candidly. A smile touched Beckett's lips. "I was thinking the same thing about you." This coincidence of perspective seemed to ease some of Phoenix's wariness. "A scary man came to Miss Jade's house," she informed him solemnly. "Mom says we need to stay somewhere safe for a while." "That's right," Beckett nodded, matching her serious tone. And this is a very safe place. There are special locks on the doors and people downstairs making sure no scary men can come in. Phoenix considered this, then asked the question that had clearly been troubling her. Why does he want to find us? Did we do something wrong? No, sweetheart, Mira interjected quickly. You didn't do anything wrong at all. The scary man is confused. Beckett added carefully. He sometimes gets mixed up about things and people, but the important thing is that you and your mom are safe here. Phoenix nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation for now. I'm hungry, she announced. Emotional resilience of childhood, asserting itself as basic needs, took precedence over fear. I ordered room service. Beckett gestured toward the dining area, where covered dishes waited. I wasn't sure what you'd like, so there's a selection. Thanks. As Phoenix moved toward the food, momentarily distracted by the impressive spread, Beckett turned to Mira with a more serious expression. We need to talk, he said quietly. About Rowan, about what happens next. After she's asleep, Mira agreed, nodding toward Phoenix. She's been through enough for one day. Dinner passed in a strange facsimile of normalcy, with Phoenix gradually relaxing enough to share details about her school and friends, while Beckett listened with undisguised fascination to every word from the daughter he just discovered. Mira observed their interaction with a complex mixture of emotions: gratitude for Beckett's natural ease with Phoenix, fear about what Rowan's appearance meant for their safety, and lingering uncertainty about whether she could fully trust the man sitting across from her. After dinner, Beckett showed them to one of the suite's bedrooms, a spacious room with 2 queen beds that would allow Mira to stay close to Phoenix. There's a connecting door to the main suite, he explained, but it locks from your side. You'll have complete privacy. The consideration in this arrangement, giving them both security and independence, didn't escape Mira's notice. Thank you, she said simply. I've had some clothes sent up for both of you, he added, gesturing to shopping bags placed discreetly in the corner. Just basics. I hope that's okay. The old Beckett might have assumed his wealth gave him the right to make such decisions without consultation. This more thoughtful version, who asked permission, was both familiar and strange, like looking at a photograph that had been subtly altered. Once Phoenix was settled in bed, the day's stresses finally catching up with her as she drifted quickly to sleep clutching her stuffed octopus, Mira returned to the main living area where Beckett waited. He had set up a makeshift command center on the dining table, laptop, multiple phones, and what appeared to be security camera feeds displayed on a tablet. The hotel security team is sending live feeds from all entrances, he explained, noting her questioning look. If Rowan tries to enter the building, we'll know immediately. You really believe he's coming after us? Mira said, not quite a question. I know he island. Beckett's expression was grim. After you called, I reached out to some contacts. Rowan was spotted at the marina yesterday, watching your office. He's been planning this, tracking you, tracking us both. Mira sank into a chair across from him, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Why now? After 6 years. Why would he suddenly fixate on me again? Because of this. Beckett turned his laptop screen toward her, showing a news article from 3 months earlier. The headline read, Rhodes Innovations CEO establishes memorial foundation in honor of deceased fiancé. I created a foundation in your memory, he explained, a flush of embarrassment coloring his cheeks, to fund arts education for underprivileged youth. You always said that having access to art classes was what saved you after your parents died. The thoughtful gesture, remembering something so personal about her after all these years, momentarily disarmed Mira. I don't understand what this has to do with Rowan. According to his doctors, the announcement triggered an obsessive episode. He became convinced that I was still holding on to you, and that he needed to free me from your ghost. Beckett ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she remembered well. When he learned I was coming to Osprey Cove for the conference, something must have connected in his mind. Or someone told him I was alive, Mira suggested. The suspicion she'd been harboring finally voiced. Someone like your mother. Beckett's expression darkened. That's not impossible. My mother has always had her own agenda where Rowan is concerned. She visits him regularly, ostensibly out of maternal duty, but I've always suspected there's more to it. Your mother never wanted me in your life, Mira reminded him. She made that abundantly clear from the beginning. If she somehow discovered I was alive. She might see Rowan as a convenient solution to a problem that resurfaced unexpectedly. Beckett finished grimly. It fits her particular brand of manipulation, maintaining plausible deniability while orchestrating chaos from a distance. The casual way he acknowledged his mother's potential involvement in a plot against her life was chilling. You really believe she's capable of that? Vivian Rhodes considers the family legacy paramount, above all else, above happiness, above ethics, certainly above love. His voice was bitter with the weight of personal experience. She spent decades curating the Rhodes image. And you, he hesitated, you represented an unpredictable variable. Someone not bound by her rules or intimidated by her influence. Someone who might encourage her son to prioritize his own happiness over the family business. Mira added, remembering the subtle and not so subtle ways Vivienne had tried to undermine their relationship. Exactly. Beckett's gaze met hers directly. Which brings us to a question I've been afraid to ask. Why did you go to Ravens Point that day? What was the news that would change everything? The question hung between them, laden with 6 years of missed opportunity and tragedy. Mira took a deep breath, steeling herself to share the truth she'd carried alone for so long. I was 12 weeks pregnant, she said quietly. I'd confirmed it that morning with a doctor. I wanted to tell you somewhere meaningful, somewhere that was just ours, away from your family's influence and the corporate pressure. Pain flashed across Beckett's features. And instead, you encountered Rowan pretending to be me. I thought it was you, Mira confirmed. The memories she'd suppressed for years finally allowed to surface. But looking back, there were signs I missed. Subtle differences in mannerisms, a strange intensity in his eyes. When I told him about the baby, his reaction was volatile. He kept saying something about how he always gets everything, and how the child should have been mine. That sounds like Rowan's delusions. Beckett nodded. Since childhood, he's believed that I somehow stole his rightful life, that he should have been the successful twin, the heir to the Rhodes legacy. He pushed me, Mira continued, the memory clearer now that she understood the context. But as I was falling, someone grabbed for me, caught my arm for just a moment before losing their grip. I remember seeing a second figure, but it was all so fast, so chaotic. I arrived just as you fell, Beckett said, his voice rough with emotion. I saw Rowan at the cliff edge, saw you falling. I lunged for you but couldn't reach in time. By the time I made it down to the rocks, emergency services were already there, and Rowan had disappeared. The revelation that Beckett had been there, had tried to save her, shifted something fundamental in Mira's understanding of that day. For 6 years, she believed he had pushed her, had wanted her, and their child dead. The truth, that he had tried desperately to save them, was almost too painful to absorb. Why didn't you tell the police? She demanded, a flare of anger breaking through her shock. Why let everyone believe it was an accident? I tried, he insisted, leaning forward with urgency. But by the time I regained consciousness at the hospital— What do you mean, regained consciousness? After I thought you died, I apparently became hysterical. The paramedics sedated me. When I woke up hours later, my mother was there with our family lawyer. They told me you were gone, that your body had been identified, that arrangements were being made. I was still in shock, barely functional. And Rowan? Back in his facility, according to my mother. She claimed he'd had a psychotic break, had no memory of what happened, and that pursuing charges would only result in traumatic publicity with no justice for your death. Beckett's voice cracked on the last words. She convinced me that honoring your memory meant moving forward, not dwelling on a tragedy that couldn't be undone. So you just accepted that, Mira said flatly. No, he shook his head firmly. I spent months investigating privately, trying to build a case against Rowan, trying to understand why he had targeted you specifically. But every lead disappeared, every potential witness changed their story, every piece of evidence somehow vanished before I could document it. Your mother's influence. Almost certainly, Beckett's expression hardened. It was only years later that I began to suspect how deep her manipulation went, that she might have known about Rowan's obsession with you and deliberately failed to warn either of us. The scope of the conspiracy Beckett was suggesting was staggering, a mother willing to risk her son's fiancé's life, rather than accept her as part of the family. Yet Mira had experienced Vivienne's cold calculation firsthand, had seen the lengths to which she would go to maintain control over her son's life. If what you're saying is true, Mira said slowly, then your mother might be helping Rowan even now. It's more than possible, Beckett agreed grimly. Which is why we need to be extremely careful about our next steps. What are our options? We could go to the police, tell them everything, your real identity, what happened 6 years ago, Rowan's history. But without concrete evidence, it would be our word against my mother's, and the Rhodes family influence runs deep, even here. And it would mean exposing Phoenix to public scrutiny. Mira added, the thought making her physically ill. The media would have a field day, the dead fiancé returning with the secret heir to the Rhodes fortune. Exactly. Beckett hesitated, then continued cautiously. There's another option. I have a private security team. I trust implicitly, people who owe their loyalty to me, not my family. They could relocate you and Phoenix somewhere safe while I deal with Rowan and my mother. You want us to run, Mira translated, a hint of her old fire returning. To hide while you handle everything. I want you to be safe, he corrected gently. Both of you. I've been hiding for 6 years, Beckett. I'm tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of living a lie. She straightened, decision crystallizing. Whatever happens next, I want to face it directly. Phoenix deserves a mother who stands her ground, not one who keeps disappearing at the first sign of trouble. A smile ghosted across his lips, pride, respect, and something else she wasn't ready to name. You always were the strongest person I knew. Before she could respond, Beckett's phone chimed with an alert. He glanced down at the screen, his expression immediately shifting from reminiscence to sharp focus. Security alert, he explained, tapping rapidly on his tablet to bring up camera feeds. Someone's attempting to access the service elevator using a staff keycard that was reported missing an hour ago. Mira moved to his side, watching as the security camera showed a figure in a hotel uniform standing at the service elevator, head carefully angled away from the camera. Is it him? She asked, though she already knew the answer. It's Rowan, Beckett confirmed grimly. Security is responding, but we should prepare for the possibility that he might make it up here. He pulled open a drawer and removed a handgun, checking it with practiced efficiency. You keep a gun in your hotel room? Mira asked, startled. After 6 years believing my brother murdered the woman I loved. I don't take chances, he replied simply. Stay with Phoenix. Lock the bedroom door. I'll handle this. No. Mira shook her head firmly. We face this together. I need to know the truth, need to look him in the eye and understand why he tried to kill me, why he's still hunting me after all this time. Azura, it's too dangerous. Rowan is unstable, unpredictable, and I've spent 6 years becoming someone who doesn't back down from threats. She interrupted. I'm not the same woman who fell from that cliff, Beckett. I won't hide in the bedroom while you risk your life for us. Their standoff was interrupted by another alert from the tablet, the security team reporting that the suspect had escaped the service area before they could apprehend him. He knows we're on to him, Beckett said, moving quickly to secure the suite's main entrance. He'll try another approach. As if summoned by his words, a soft knock came at the door, not the forceful pounding of security or the aggressive entry they'd expected, but a gentle, almost hesitant rap. Room service, called a voice that was eerily similar to Beckett's but with subtle differences. A slightly higher pitch, a faint tremor underlying the words. Beckett and Mira exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them with surprising ease despite their years apart. He moved to position himself beside the door, gun ready but out of sight, while Mira stepped to the side, grabbing a heavy crystal vase as an improvised weapon. We didn't order anything, Beckett called through the door. Complimentary champagne, the voice replied. For the tech conference keynote speaker. Leave it outside. I'll get it later. A pause. Then, I know she's in there, brother. I can feel her presence. You can't hide her from me forever. The pretense abandoned, Rowan's voice took on a more manic quality that sent chills down Mira's spine. Beckett tensed, his finger moving to the gun's trigger guard. Rowan, you need help, he said firmly. Let me call your doctors. We can work through this together. A harsh laugh echoed through the door. Always the reasonable one. Always the good son. Did you tell her how you stole my life? How it should have been me running the company, me with the perfect fiancé, me with the adoring public. No one stole anything from you, Beckett replied, his voice deliberately calm. Your illness created delusions that... Illness? Rowan's voice rose sharply. Is that what Mother calls it? A convenient illness to explain away the twin who didn't fit the Rhodes image? The twin who saw through her manipulations? Mira's grip tightened on the vase as she processed the implications of Rowan's words. Was it possible he was a victim of Vivian's machinations as well, in his own way? Let's talk about this, Beckett offered. Just you and me. Leave Azura out of it. It's too late for that, Rowan replied, his voice suddenly cold and focused. She's already part of this. She always was. Mother made sure of that. Before either of them could respond to this cryptic statement, a small voice from the bedroom doorway froze them both in place. Mommy? Phoenix stood there in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed octopus. I heard voices. Time seemed to suspend as multiple realizations hit simultaneously. Phoenix was exposed, the bedroom door was open, and Rowan had gone ominously silent on the other side of the main door. Phoenix, go back inside, Mira urged, moving toward her daughter with desperate speed. But it was too late. A tremendous crash came from the balcony as the glass door shattered inward, Rowan having scaled from a lower floor rather than continuing his ruse at the main entrance. He stood amid the glittering shards, a perfect mirror image of Beckett save for the wild look in his eyes and the gun clutched in his trembling hand. So this is why Mother has been so concerned lately, he said, his gaze fixed on Phoenix with disturbing intensity. A little Rhodes heir, hidden away all these years. How fascinating. Stay away from her, Mira warned, placing herself between Rowan and her daughter. Beckett had pivoted at the sound of breaking glass, his own weapon now trained steadily on his twin. Rowan, put the gun down. This has gone far enough. Has it? Rowan tilted his head, studying his brother with clinical detachment. I don't think it's gone nearly far enough. Not until I finish what I started 6 years ago. Why? Mira demanded, needing to understand even in this moment of extreme danger. Why did you push me that day? What had I ever done to you? Rowan's attention shifted to her, his expression softening into something almost wistful. It wasn't personal, Azura. You were simply in the way. Mother explained it all so clearly. Beckett needed to focus on the company, on our legacy. Your pregnancy would have distracted him, diverted resources that rightfully belonged to the Rhodes bloodline. Mother told you to kill me? The confirmation of Vivian's involvement was both shocking and somehow unsurprising. Not in those exact words. Rowan smiled, the expression chilling on a face so identical to Beckett's. She simply pointed out how much better everything would be if you weren't in the picture. How Beckett would thank us eventually for saving him from a mesalliance. You're lying, Beckett interjected, though doubt had crept into his voice. Mother wouldn't go that far. Wouldn't she? Rowan laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. Who do you think suggested I take your place that day? Who provided me with your clothes, your cologne, details about your relationship that only a careful observer would know? Who promised me that if I helped solve the Azura problem, I could have a real place in the family again, instead of being hidden away like a shameful secret? The pieces aligned with terrible clarity, Vivian's determination to separate Beckett from Azura, her immediate control of the situation after the accident, her careful management of the narrative that followed. It hadn't been mere opportunism. It had been calculated orchestration from the beginning. I tried to save you, Beckett told Mira, his gaze never leaving his brother even as he spoke to her. When I realized what was happening, I raced to the cliff. I almost reached you in time. I remember, Mira said softly. Someone grabbed my arm as I fell. It was you. How touching, Rowan sneered. The star-crossed lovers, reunited against all odds. But you're forgetting something crucial. He shifted his aim toward Phoenix, who stood frozen in terror behind her mother. History has a way of repeating itself, doesn't it? Another cliff, another choice about who lives and who dies. No one is dying today, Beckett stated firmly, his gun unwavering. It's over, Rowan. Security is already on their way. There's no escape this time. I don't need to escape, Rowan replied with eerie calm. I just need to finish what I started. What Mother always intended. Everything happened in a blur of motion, Rowan lunging toward Phoenix, Mira throwing herself forward to intercept him, Beckett shouting a warning as he tried to get a clear shot without risking Mira or their daughter. The struggle was chaotic, desperate, Mira fighting with the ferocious strength of a mother protecting her child while Rowan's madness gave him unpredictable power. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the confined space of the suite. For a terrible moment, no one moved, the tableau frozen in shock. Then Rowan staggered backward, a look of surprise crossing his features as he looked down at the spreading crimson stain on his shirt. But it wasn't Beckett who had fired. It was a third figure standing in the now open doorway of the suite, an elegant woman in her 60s with silver-streaked dark hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Mother?" Beckett's voice was thick with disbelief. Vivian Rhodes lowered the small pistol she held, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the scene before her. "He was always going to be a liability," she said, matter-of-factly. "I should have realized that 6 years ago." Rowan collapsed to his knees, one hand pressed to his wound, the other still weakly gripping his gun. "You promised," he gasped, looking up at Vivian with betrayal in his eyes. "You said I could come home if I fixed your mistakes." "My dear boy," Vivian replied, her tone almost gentle despite the coldness in her eyes. "You were the mistake, one I've spent far too long trying to manage." "You set him up," Mira realized, holding Phoenix close as she stared at the woman who had orchestrated her nightmare. 6 years ago, and again now. "You knew I was alive, knew where to find me. You manipulated Rowan into coming after me again." "Necessity often requires difficult choices," Vivian said calmly. "Rowan's obsession with destroying his brother's happiness made him useful once. I had hoped to utilize that tendency again, creating a situation where he would eliminate both of you cleanly, leaving Beckett properly focused on the company once more." "My God," Beckett whispered, horror dawning as he finally confronted the full extent of his mother's machinations. "You were willing to sacrifice your own granddaughter. A child raised in secret by a woman living under a false identity?" Vivian's lip curled slightly. Hardly a suitable heir to the Rhodes legacy. Better to start fresh, with a proper arrangement and appropriate prenuptial agreements. The casual dismissal of Phoenix's life, of Mira's years of sacrifice, ignited a fury in Beckett that transformed his expression into something almost as dangerous as Rowan's madness. "You're done," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Done controlling this family, done manipulating lives, done destroying everything that doesn't fit your narrow vision of what the Rhodes name should represent." "Don't be dramatic, Beckett," Vivian sighed. "I've merely been protecting our family interests, as I've always done." "By committing attempted murder? Twice?" Mira demanded, unable to comprehend the woman's rationalization of her actions. "I prefer to think of it as pruning unhealthy growth to preserve the strength of the tree," Vivian replied with chilling detachment. "Now, I suggest we call security and explain how Rowan attacked you both, forcing me to shoot him in your defense. A tragic end to a troubled life, but one that allows us all to move forward appropriately." "There's just one problem with that plan," Beckett said, nodding toward the corner of the room where a small red light blinked steadily. "Every word of this conversation has been recorded. Every admission, every threat, every callous dismissal of human life in favor of your precious legacy." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Vivian's composed features. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Beckett's smile held no warmth. "I've spent 6 years investigating what really happened to Azura. Did you think I wouldn't take precautions when Rowan resurfaced? That I wouldn't be prepared for every contingency, including your involvement?" The standoff was interrupted by the arrival of hotel security, followed closely by police responding to the report of gunshots. The next hours passed in a blur of statements and medical attention. Rowan rushed to surgery with a non-fatal wound, Vivian taken into custody despite her imperious protests, Mira and Phoenix examined by paramedics, though thankfully neither had been physically harmed. Through it all, Beckett remained a steady presence, handling officials with practiced ease while ensuring Mira and Phoenix were protected from unnecessary questioning and media attention that had inevitably begun to gather as rumors spread of drama in the Rhodes family. It was nearly dawn when they were finally alone again, Phoenix having fallen into exhausted sleep in the bedroom that had mercifully remained untouched by the violence. Mira sat on the balcony, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders against the pre-dawn chill, staring out at the ocean that had been her sanctuary for 6 years. Beckett joined her silently, offering a cup of tea which she accepted with grateful hands. "The police have enough evidence to charge both of them," he said after a moment. Rowan for the attempts on your life, my mother as an accessory and conspirator. The recording was clear enough that even the Rhodes family influence can't make this disappear. Mira nodded, too drained for words. The revelation of Vivian's calculated malevolence, the confrontation with Rowan, the shattering of the careful life she built, it was overwhelming. A tidal wave of reality crashing through the walls she constructed to protect herself and Phoenix. What happens now? She asked finally, the question encompassing far more than just the immediate future. That depends, Beckett replied carefully, on what you want, what Phoenix needs, what future you envision now that the truth is known. I can't go back to being Mira Reed, she said slowly. That life is over, but I'm not sure I know how to be Azura Thorne anymore either. That woman died on those cliffs 6 years ago, in many ways. No, perhaps you don't need to be either, Beckett suggested. Perhaps you can be someone new, someone who carries the strength you found as Mira and the dreams you had as Azura. The idea was both terrifying and liberating, the possibility of integration rather than reinvention, of building on both parts of her life rather than choosing between them. And Phoenix? She asked, the question that mattered most. What does this mean for her? Beckett's expression softened at the mention of their daughter. Whatever you decide, whatever relationship you're comfortable with me having in her life. I won't pressure you, won't use the Rhodes name or resources to force my way into her world. But I'd like the chance to know her, to be her father in whatever capacity you feel is appropriate. The humility in his request, the absence of entitlement she might have expected, touched something deep within Mira. This was not the ambitious young CEO who had been manipulated by his family's expectations, nor the grieving man who had been deceived into believing he'd lost everything. This was someone tempered by loss, by regret, by the realization of what truly mattered. She needs stability, Mira said finally. After everything that's happened, she needs to feel safe, to understand that her world isn't going to keep shifting beneath her feet. Of course, Beckett agreed immediately. We can take things slowly, at whatever pace works for both of you. And us? She asked, finally voicing the question that hung between them. What happens to us, Beckett? He met her gaze directly, the intensity in his blue eyes, Phoenix's eyes, unwavering. 6 years ago, I lost the future I wanted more than anything. I lost you, lost our child, lost the life we might have built together. I've spent every day since then trying to understand what happened, trying to honor the memory of what we had. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I won't pretend those years didn't change me, didn't change you. We're different people now. But the core of what I felt for you, that hasn't changed. I spent 6 years hating you. Mira admitted quietly. 6 years believing you tried to kill me, that you valued your company more than our child. That hatred became a foundation I built my new life upon. I understand, he said, acceptance rather than hurt in his voice. And I don't expect that to disappear overnight, if ever. But it wasn't real. She continued. It was based on a lie, a manipulation so elaborate that I never questioned it. And now I'm left wondering what's true, what's genuine in how I feel. Perhaps we both need time, Beckett suggested. Time to process the truth, to adjust to this new reality. Time to discover who we are now, without lies or manipulation between us. Mira nodded, grateful for his understanding. I'd like that. A chance to know you again, as we are now, not as we were then. As the first rays of sunrise broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the ocean, Mira felt something shift within her. Not forgiveness exactly, for there was nothing to forgive Beckett for. But perhaps the beginning of healing, of accepting that the past was more complex than she had believed, and the future more open than she had dared to hope. 6 months later, the beachfront property just outside Osprey Cove was smaller than the Rhodes family estate but infinitely more welcoming, a modern home with walls of glass that embraced the natural beauty of its surroundings rather than imposing upon it. Phoenix had her own wing, decorated according to her exacting specifications with an ocean-themed bedroom and adjoining laboratory where her scientific curiosity could flourish. Azura, who had reclaimed her name, while maintaining Mira as a professional identity for her design business, stood on the deck watching Phoenix and Beckett on the beach below. Their heads bent together as they examined something in a tide pool. The past months had brought monumental changes, Vivian and Rowan both imprisoned awaiting trial. The Rhodes family business restructured under new leadership after Beckett stepped down as CEO to focus on humanitarian technology initiatives and the gradual, careful building of a new family dynamic that honored truth while creating space for healing. They're cataloging sea creatures again, observed Dr. Linnea Frost, joining Azura on the deck with 2 glasses of iced tea. Phoenix is determined to create the most comprehensive tide pool inventory on the West Coast, with the most sophisticated database a 6-year-old has ever designed. Azura added with a smile, accepting the drink gratefully. Beckett's been teaching her coding. It's terrifying how quickly she picks it up. The doctor had become a regular presence in their lives since the truth emerged, her early role in saving Azura and Phoenix creating a bond that had deepened into genuine friendship. It was Linnea who had helped Azura navigate the complex legal and emotional process of reclaiming her identity while protecting Phoenix from media scrutiny. "How are you feeling about the trial next month?" Linnea asked, her professional instincts for emotional well-being never entirely absent. "Nervous," Azura admitted. "Testifying means publicly acknowledging everything, the fall, the deception, the years in hiding. Phoenix will have questions I'm not sure I'm ready to answer." "Children are remarkably adaptable," Linnea reminded her, "especially when they feel secure in being loved. And that child has never doubted your love for a moment." Below them, Phoenix had apparently made an exciting discovery, judging by her animated gestures and Beckett's impressed response. The ease between them, the natural bond that had formed despite their years apart, was both beautiful and bittersweet to witness. "And Beckett?" Linnea inquired carefully. "How are things progressing there?" A complicated question with an equally complicated answer. The past 6 months had been a deliberate, cautious rebuilding, weekly family dinners, evolving into more frequent time together, professional collaboration on a charitable foundation merging their respective skills, and most recently, tentative steps toward rekindling the personal connection that had never fully died despite years of separation and misunderstanding. "We're taking it slowly," Azura replied, a smile touching her lips as she watched him lift Phoenix onto his shoulders for a better view of a distant pelican, building something new rather than trying to resurrect what was lost. "Wise approach." Linnea nodded approvingly, though I've rarely seen 2 people more clearly meant to find their way back to each other. Before Azura could respond to this observation, Phoenix and Beckett were making their way up the beach path toward the house, their daughter racing ahead with a jar containing her latest marine specimen. "Mom, Dr. Linnea, look what we found," Phoenix exclaimed, carefully displaying a small, brilliantly colored sea star. "It's a juvenile Pateria miniata. Dad says they're uncommon in tide pools because they usually stay in deeper water." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Azura examined the creature with appropriate admiration. "Remember, we need to return it to the ocean after you've documented it." "I know." Phoenix nodded seriously. "Dad already helped me take pictures for my database. Can we have lunch now? I'm starving." "Why don't you help Dr. Linnea set the table?" Azura suggested. "I made your favorite sandwiches." As Phoenix led the doctor inside, chattering enthusiastically about their morning discoveries, Beckett joined Azura on the deck. The past months had changed him too, the corporate polish replaced by a more relaxed demeanor, stress lines eased from his face, a quiet contentment that hadn't been there even in their early days together. "She's going to be a marine biologist," he predicted with obvious pride. "Or possibly the next great technology innovator. Or both simultaneously, knowing Phoenix. She certainly has the determination for it," Azura agreed. "And the intelligence." "She gets that from you," Beckett said, his gaze warm as it rested on her face. "The relentless pursuit of understanding, the refusal to accept limitations." "And the stubborn streak? The absolute certainty that her way is the right way?" Azura raised an eyebrow teasingly. "That's all you, Rhodes." "Huh?" He laughed, the sound still something of a novelty after years of grief and guilt. "Fair enough, though I prefer to call it focused conviction." The easy banter between them was relatively new, a sign of growing comfort, of walls carefully lowered as trust rebuilt itself day by day. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the ocean waves, before Beckett spoke again. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "Something I've been holding on to for 6 years." He opened his palm to reveal a small velvet box, worn at the edges from years of handling. Azura's breath caught as she recognized it, the ring box he'd given her the day of their engagement, containing the sapphire and diamond ring that had been lost in the fall. "You kept it all this time?" "It was the only tangible piece of you I had left," he admitted. "During the worst days, when the grief seemed unbearable, holding this was the only thing that helped." He opened the box to reveal not the original ring as she'd expected, but something new, a platinum band set with 3 stones, a larger sapphire flanked by 2 smaller diamonds. "This isn't a proposal," he clarified quickly, seeing her surprise. "At least, not the traditional kind. It's more of a promise, a new beginning." "Beckett, the stones represent our past, our present, and our future," he explained. "The sapphire for what we once had, the diamonds for what we're building now. You, me, and Phoenix as a family, whatever form that takes." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, the respect for her need for autonomy even as he expressed his own hopes, touched Azura deeply. 6 years ago, she might have expected grand gestures and public declarations from Beckett Rhodes. This private moment, this careful offering of possibility rather than presumption, spoke volumes about how they had both grown. "It's beautiful," she said softly, taking the box from his hand, "and the sentiment behind it even more so." "You don't need to wear it," he assured her. "I just wanted you to have it, to know that whatever happens between us, whatever path we choose together or separately, these 3 stones will always represent what matters most to me." 1. Azura studied the ring, the way the light caught the facets of the stones, creating depths and dimensions that shifted with each movement. Like their relationship, complex, multifaceted, capable of reflecting light even from the darkest angles. "I'd like to wear it," she decided, removing the ring from its box. "Not as an engagement ring, but as a symbol of where we've been and where we might go. A reminder that sometimes what seems broken beyond repair can be transformed into something new, something different but equally valuable." Beckett smiled as she slipped the ring onto her right hand, a deliberate choice that acknowledged this was not simply a return to their past, was worth more than any declaration of love could have been. It held hope, patience, and most importantly, respect for the journey they were navigating together. "Mom, Dad, lunch is ready," Phoenix called from inside the house, the simple domesticity of the moment a stark contrast to the drama that had brought them to this point. As they turned to join their daughter, Beckett's hand found Azura's, their fingers intertwining with the natural ease of 2 people finding their way back to each other after a long separation. Not the same people who had parted on that cliff 6 years ago, but perhaps better versions. Stronger, wiser, more capable of building something that could withstand the storms life might still bring their way. The past could not be changed, the years lost never reclaimed, but the future stretched before them, undefined and full of possibility, a blank canvas rather than a predetermined path. And for the first time in 6 years, Azura found herself looking forward without fear, embracing not just survival, but the prospect of genuine happiness for herself and the daughter who had been her anchor through the darkest times. Sometimes, she reflected as they joined Phoenix and Linnea at the table, what appears to be an ending is merely a painful but necessary detour on the way to where you were always meant to be. And sometimes, against all odds and reason, second chances come disguised as the very tragedies we believe have destroyed us. If this story of deception, redemption, and second chances resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth. Remember that sometimes the truth is more complex than our fears would have us believe, and that even in our darkest moments, unexpected light can find its way through. Until next time, look for the miracle hidden within what seems like disaster. It might just lead you to the life you were always meant to live.